Hey everybody, we're joined by Alan Swack with Accurate Home Inspections, and we're going to talk home inspection.
Good morning, everybody. Thank you for joining us today.
Tell us about your business and how you got started. Give us the background here on how you are where you are now.
Oh, that's a great question, Ricardo. Before I got into the home inspection business, I was actually an apprentice carpenter. So I framed a lot of houses and helped on a lot of remodeling projects. And then I just decided that was really physically exhaustive. So in the summer of 2010, I decided to pursue the field of home inspections. And so I took a class offered through AHIT, the American Home Inspector Training Institute. Upon graduation of those classes, I then joined the local ASHI group here. ASHI stands for American Society of Home Inspectors, just to keep up with all the current building requirements of a home. And so luckily, with being a member of ASHI, we meet once a month and for 2 hours, and we do continuing education. And so we learn about siding and electrical, and we have a pest inspector comes in, all sorts of different people in different fields that come in. And in order to be a member of good standing, you have to have 20 hours a year. So by attending our monthly meetings of 2 hours, you can easily meet that requirement of 20 hours a month, or I'm sorry, 20 hours a year. And it's great education, and it's a great group of guys. I mean, there's home inspectors from all over the state of Iowa that come, like from Burlington and Des Moines and Sioux City, for example, and Cedar Rapids. And then after being a member of ASHI for a while, I found out there's another group out there called NACHI or InterNACHI. And what they do is they're another group that does online classes. So you don't actually have to physically meet in a classroom. You can do everything online. And so I wanted to keep expanding my knowledge of home inspections. And so I actually took the InterNACHI classes and then became a licensed Illinois home inspector. So I'm actually a two-state inspector. I can perform inspections in Iowa and in Illinois. And then with Illinois, you have to keep up every 2 years with 12 hours of continuing education just to renew your license. If you don't, you have to start the process all over again. That's the reason why I got into the home inspection business.
Wow, I didn't realize you were licensed in Illinois as well.
It is. If you want to expand your territory, shoot, sometimes just driving from North Liberty to Iowa City could take a half hour. So it's really not that much longer to go drive to the Quad Cities.
This next question I answer for buyers too, but I want to hear from the inspector perspective. Why is it a good idea for a home buyer, specifically residential, to conduct a home inspection?
That's a great question. For the home buyers, what a great way to get an education about their purchase of their dream home. Home inspectors will see things typically that home owners will not see during the home inspection process. Perfect example is yesterday there was electrical connections just dangling in the ceiling that weren't connected to anything. And the homeowner said, well, I'm going to install a drop ceiling, so I can just go ahead and install that drop ceiling and hide all that. Well, yes and no. I mean, yeah, you're going to go ahead and hide it, but you're still not correcting the issue, which is there's wires sticking out of these junction boxes that are live wires. And I explained it to him that while you're installing your drop ceiling, if you accidentally rub up against one of these wires and you're touching the metal of the drop ceiling, you possibly could get an electrical shock. So, I would recommend that they be corrected. And they're like, oh, okay, that's a good idea. And then also, too, part of the home inspection process is we try to inform the buyer about the components of the age of their components, like the furnace and the air conditioning and the water heater. Because if those were to go out like the day after closing, those are an expensive, costly item to have to replace. A water heater could be up to $1,000 to have to hire a plumber and remove and replace it. Furnaces and airs are about approximately $2,500 each. So if a homeowner decides, hey, I'm going to go ahead and waive the $400 inspection fee and then find out they got $15,000 worth of repairs, that's never a good idea. I never want to see anybody have that happen to them.
you kind of touched a little bit on my next question, but what basic components do you look at during a home inspection if you were to give a general uh, example?
Yeah, no, that's a great question, Ricardo. Yeah, so the home inspection report's broken down actually into components and systems. Components being windows, doors, siding, roof covering, attic, ceiling, and walls. So those are all components that we're looking at the house, you know, operating, opening and closing windows, making sure they lock properly, opening and closing doors, making sure they close properly in their door frame, looking at the siding, making sure it's properly attached, looking up in the attic to see, you know, what the levels of insulation is, and also too, if there's any kind of moisture staining up on the roof sheathing of the attic, and then you know, getting up on the roof and making sure there's no curling shingles or missing shingles or any kind of deterioration, which would show, you know, the sign of a aging roof. And then when we talk about systems, we're operating your electrical system, your plumbing system, your heating system, and your cooling system. So when we operate the systems, there's really kind of an overlap of operating the systems, because one, with the electrical, we want to turn on the furnace and the dishwasher and the washing machine, all the lights, test all the outlets. We want to make sure that the electrical service to that home can keep up with that home's needs when the buyer is moving in and operating all those components. And then also too, it's kind of an overlap because, you know, even though the furnace is on, then we're be part of the electrical system. We're also checking to make sure we got proper heat, temperature at all the vents in the rooms. And then also too, with the plumbing, you know, we're operating the dishwasher, the wash machine, and, you know, sellers hate me because then I like to run the water for about an hour at all the fixtures. And the reason why we do that is because we're trying to fill up all the drain pipes with water. And we want to make sure that there's proper flow when the wash machine is on, when the dishwasher's on, especially the washing machine, because the wash machine is so forceful when it discharges all the water out of the washing machine that if there's any blockage in the drain pipe, you go down to the furnace room, we'll see water come up through the drain. And so then we know there's some sort of blockage in there. So so even though we're operating all these systems, we're not like doing one at a time. There is an overlap, but we are testing all of them. And then also too, appliances, I kind of call that a system because, you know, that's part of the dishwasher and the washing machine is part of your plumbing system. And then we want to make sure the stove works. You know, it's an interesting part of ASHI is they say you don't have to worry about inspecting the refrigerator because typically the refrigerator isn't there in the home when the home buyer buys it. And I'm like, well, not here. I would say 99 out of 100 homes have a refrigerator. So, I mean, we have a digital thermometer and we just open up the refrigerator and we like to check the temperature of the refrigerator and the freezer just to make sure that they're, you know, about 40 degrees for a refrigerator and about about 10 degrees for a freezer. And so, yeah, so basically my home inspection report is broken down into components and systems when we perform an inspection for the home buyer. Most home inspections take about approximately 3 hours. So we usually try to arrive at the home about a half hour early. So the morning appointment, for example, if it's scheduled from 9 to 12, we're going to arrive right about 8:30, get started with the exterior, and then at 9 o'clock be able to go inside, perform the inspection. And then we always like to have everybody arrive, if you can't attend the inspection, for the last 45 minutes. That way it gives us time to go over the report with you, and then also to go around and show you any deficient items that were found in the house. And we have a report that we prepare electronically on our tablet. And then once we're done with the inspection, we go ahead and email that report out to the buyer, along with any other services that were performed, like radon or a pest inspection.
We've been talking mainly about the whole house inspection, but can you tell us about the other inspections that you do?
Sure. Yeah, we call those ancillary services. So we also perform radon testing. And unfortunately, radon is an issue here in Iowa, in the Midwest, just because we do have unacceptable levels. Radon testing is a 2-day test, 48 hours. So what we like to do is go ahead and set the radon monitor 2 days before the home inspection. And the reason why is that way the day of the home inspection, all the unknown questions are answered about the home. I used to set the radon monitor the day of the inspection, but then I'd always get a call the next day. What's the radon? Well, it's a 2-day test. Yeah, I know. What's the radon? I'm like, well, it's a 2-day test. So if it's Monday, we won't know till Wednesday. Well, they're calling me on Tuesday. What's the radon? So if you set it 2 days before, everybody forgets that you set the radon monitor, and then you just know the result the day of the inspection. We also perform wood destroying insect inspections. I call them termite inspections because really that's what you're looking for in homes anymore now is termites. Turn of the century homes, so like 19th century homes used to have issues with powder post beetles, but we're finding out that powder post beetles actually don't stay very active for very long. Powder post beetles in an older house, if you're looking at the floor joists down in the basement, you'll see small little holes where the larva comes out. And that's how, and then you see sawdust. So that's how you know you have powder post beetles. With termites, you're going to see they're subterranean. So you're actually going to see mud tubes along the side of your house. So they're living in the ground and then they're trying to find moisture. And so they'll go ahead and build a mud tunnel along the side of your house to enter into the home because they need to keep a moist environment in order to survive. So they're just not like walking from the ground into the house. They actually build a mud tube. So it's a good way to find one. I did a home inspection in Cedar Rapids up there by Usher Ferry and had a garage under a garage. And the termites were so persistent that they came up 2/3 of the concrete wall in the lower garage before they gave up with that mud tube. So we also perform mold inspections. Mold inspections is kind of a 3-step process. One, we visually come in and look at the house and see what rooms are a concern. 2, we collect air samples. And the reason why we collect air samples is because with mold is possible. There could be one room in your house that you feel uncomfortable in compared to any other house, any other room in your house. And that room possibly has mold and you might not visually see it. It might be trapped behind the walls. And so we go ahead and collect air samples. And what we're doing with those air samples is we're actually collecting mold spores. So there's mold spores on the outside of your house, in the plants, in the bushes. And so then that's our control sample. So we collect that mold sample outside, and then we come inside the house and we're either collecting 2 or 3 or 4 air samples. And then we're comparing the mold spores that we collected inside the house to what's outside the house. Typically, you're going to find the same sort of mold spores outside and inside, but sometimes not. And sometimes the ones that we do find are related to your HVAC system. They're in the ductwork. And so then you need a good cleaning there. And then we just go ahead and give the results to the buyer and let them decide how to proceed forward, if they want any kind of remediation for mold or if it's just your typical mold. And then we also do asbestos inspections. And there what we do is we'll come in and, like your popcorn acoustic ceilings possibly could have asbestos in it. There's that white tape covering on older homes, that white tape covering around the ductwork possibly could be asbestos. And then also too with your floor tile, if you have floor tiles that measure 9-inch by 9-inch squares, those are typically possibly could have asbestos. The ceramic tile floor that they make now, the 10 by 10, the 12 by 12, you don't have to worry about any kind of asbestos being inside that tile. They didn't use asbestos to manufacture that, but back in the 50s, those 9 by 9 tiles possibly could have asbestos. And really when it comes to mold and asbestos, the only way to know if you have mold or asbestos as a home is laboratory testing. So we go ahead and collect those samples and then mail them out to a lab and let the lab analyze it for us.
Can you maybe share like a crazy inspection story that comes to mind if you have any? I'm sure you've seen lots of stuff, but anything takes the cake recently?
That's a great question, Ricardo. Typically the #1 write-up on home inspection report is no presence of GFCI outlets like in kitchen or bathrooms. But crazier things that we see on inspections is electrical connections like in the basement or in the attic. So you have the wires just coming together and they just have them either wire nutted or electrical taped together. And all electrical connections need to be installed in a junction box. When we don't see those electrical connections installed in a junction box, then we know we call that DIY. It's a do-it-yourself project. Probably the homeowner just didn't know any better and thought it was a great idea. Yesterday's home inspection, right out of the junction box, there was 2 wires that had wire nuts on them that weren't attached to anything. And we have an electrical tester and we test that. And they were live. And I'm like, okay, well, where are they supposed to go to? You always wonder, what was somebody thinking here that they were going to go ahead and put in a light fixture? Not sure. And then sometimes we find live electrical wires wrapped up in the ceiling joists in the basement that aren't attached to anything. So if you would accidentally grab that, you're possibly going to get an electric shock. So the biggest thing is electrical when it comes to the home inspection. We're making sure that the home is safe. There was a home inspection that we performed east of town here, and it had a garage built onto the house, and then the seller went ahead and cited the whole house to disguise the fact that the garage was built on later. But what he didn't know, or that the buyer didn't know, was that the garage was just built on a concrete pad, kind of like when you walk out your patio door and you go outside and you got a concrete pad where your patio furniture is at. It's kind of a concrete pad like that. It just sits on the ground. There's no frost footings. Well, this seller went ahead and built the garage, one-car garage, right on top of this concrete pad. And so when you looked at the back door, you could just tell it was so unlevel that it was settling. So I mentioned it to the buyer, and the buyer went into the garage and he grabbed some tool and he started digging on all three sides of the garage looking for frost footings. I said, I don't think there's any frost footings. And he sat there for 15 minutes digging underneath that garage looking for frost footings. And then he said, I concur, there's no frost footings. But the biggest thing we've come across is electrical, where the homeowner decides to build an addition, is going to do the electrical himself, which, you know, that happens out in the county, not so much in the city and municipalities. And they're taking this huge wire, which is like a 6-gauge wire, and then they're taking that white Romex, which is a 14-gauge wire, connecting it together, and then running it to the sub panel and saying, okay, I got 100 amp service over here. And that would definitely be considered undersized for the home.
Yeah, well, that's why people like to do inspections, right? To find out those things before they become surprises.
Exactly. Well, we don't like to use the F word, the fire word on the inspection. So we just say this is a concern. What's new with accurate home inspections is that we're getting ready to offer infrared inspections as part of the home inspection. So I got this infrared camera. I'm going to take a class on and how to read what it's telling me, because as you can see by the picture, you know, it shows red and blue. Well, what exactly does that red and blue mean? Well, it means we have a warm spot and a cold spot. But when you point it to a wall or a ceiling, what exactly is that trying to tell us? So that's something new we're going to offer. I learned about infrared cameras some years ago, and I wanted to do an in-person class, and I did a 16-hour class just to become certified to do it on the home inspection. But I want to take with this camera, take a week class. But unfortunately, right now everything's offered through Zoom, and I'd rather do it in person because you can actually operate your camera and you're pointing it to things, and the instructor's right there to say, well, this is what this means, and that's what this doesn't mean. And doing it Zoom, I don't feel like I'm going to get that same feeling. So hopefully toward the later this year, they're going to start offering in-person classes again. So I'll be attending one of those in the near future. And, you know, we always just want to try to educate the buyer about their home purchase. I mean, we're not there looking for any kind of deficient items. I always conclude the inspection with the buyer, and I just say, you know, a home inspection is like reading a book. We're here today just to read the story. And then I give them a book on tips how to operate their home and congratulate them on their home purchase.
How can people get a hold of you if they want to hire you as their inspector?
Well, that's a great question. A couple of ways. One, they can call the phone number, 319-341-4344. And you can talk to the office, and the office is going to go ahead. We got a great office staff. We're going to ask you a bunch of questions about the home, and then we'll go ahead and get your inspection scheduled. Or you can go ahead and schedule online. You can go to the website, www.accuratehomeinspection.biz, and there'll be a link there to go ahead and you click on, and you can enter all the information about the home, and then you can pick your date and time when you would like to schedule your home inspection that works best for you. We have 11 time slots during the week. We have 2 every day, Monday through Friday, a morning and an afternoon, and then we also have Saturday mornings for inspections.
Alan, thank you so much for joining and sharing all your knowledge about this. And hopefully this will educate some buyers, future home buyers, about the inspection process.
I hope so. And thanks for inviting me in today. Had a great time.
Thanks for coming.